Barricaded doors, scratching noises, and a smell of fear in the air. When a silhouette appears at the window, one of the survivors recognizes their missing friend, lover, or family member. They run to the door, open up, just to let death drag itself inside and unleash hell upon the entire group. The one they thought to be their returning loved one turns out to be nothing like themselves. Rotten, with empty eyes and a gnawing hunger. They are part of the growing masses of the undead. Unstoppable monsters brought back to life with the only goal to spread and feed. Zombies. These creatures have infected our stories for a long time now. How long exactly? And how do the racist attitudes alluded to in this episode's title play into all of this? Stay tuned, because in today's Neffview, we're munching on more than just popcorn. So grab yours and let me welcome you to today's short Neffviews deep dive on the undying creatures from the grave. Zombies. We all immediately know what someone is talking about when that word is dropped. Walking corpses, either with slow dragging movements and a slouch that would have physical therapists pulling out their hair, or the complete opposite, with speed like they're on some kind of drug. The living dead are just that. Dead, but not quite. It's always questionable how much of a person is left in the shell of a body that lusts for human flesh. Usually triggered through some kind of virus, zombies are all too familiar to us consumers of almost any type of media. But what would you say if I told you that this image of the zombie that we have in our heads today is not the same as the one from way back, when zombie lore originated? There are overlaps, sure, but since the zombie figure is much older than some of you may think, it's unsurprising that the creature underwent some changes. It's so old that we have to flip the page all the way back to the 17th century to unveil the zombie's dark and rotten roots. The birth of a movie monster. Let's start with the lingo. The word zombie most likely stems from the West African Nzambi, which, according to the sources I found, translates to spirit of a dead person. That is certainly a telling name. The myth of the monster itself can be traced to the 17th and 18th century Haiti. Back when Haiti was under French occupation, the French not only claimed the land, but also the workforce. Haitians were forced to work on sugar plantations, victims of misery and subjugation. They were slaves, with no escape from their suffering but death. The latter, they believed, would release them to an afterlife. This only rang true, however, if you died without, let's call it, self-intervention. Death by unaliving yourself would instead lead to eternal suffering. They would be condemned to work the fields forever, their souls tethered to the living realm, and their bodies in mere servitude of the endless grind. In 1804, Haiti gained independence from France. The slave-like notion of the zombie then folded into folklore and merged with the voodoo religion. Building on previous beliefs, those who died of unnatural causes would linger in their grave until the gods allowed them to rejoin their ancestors. During their wait, the unlucky souls were exposed to sorcerers, who were known as bokors. They could raise the dead's bodies and bend their will to theirs, turning them into their eternal servants. And then enter the United States of America. Haiti seemingly couldn't catch a break. After the French, the next colonizers came knocking. During the US occupation from 1915 to 1934, the Haitian folktales made their ways to the West. Twisted to fit Western narratives, of course. The Haitian zombie started to appear in Western stories, one of the most famous ones being in William Seabrook's 1929 The Magic Island. In this book, Seabrook described his travels in Haiti, exotifying tales of magic and voodoo, including the figure of the zombie. His tale sparked much interest, and subsequently, the Western version of the Haitian zombie was born, somewhat detaching itself from its Haitian roots as American pop culture started to whitewash the creature. The appeal tempted filmmakers to bring the zombie onto the big screen. In 1932, the zombie made its debut in Victor Halperline's White Zombie, which was loosely based on the Magic Island novel. It's considered to be the first feature-length zombie movie, and starred Bela Lugosi as the villain, who was the horror movie actor at the time. He also played the main role of Dracula in the movie of the same name, so maybe you've seen him in that one. Back to the movie at hand, White Zombie centers around a young white woman named Madeline. She's a bride-to-be, and she's visiting a friend of hers, who happens to be a wealthy plantation owner. He also happens to be in love with her, although she doesn't reciprocate his feelings. Because of that, he turns to a voodoo magician, a bokor, played by Bela Lugosi. Instead of giving the plantation owner the lovely mingling he's asked for, however, the bokor has other plans for Madeline. He turns her into one of his servants, into a beautiful yet soulless white zombie. In the end, of course, Madeline is once again freed from the bokor's grasps. He's pushed off a cliff, leaving Madeline and her fiancé to rejoice in their love. The zombies here don't have much in common with the ones that we typically associate with zombies today. The undead look very much alive. No rotten flesh or foul walking corpses. Neither are they interested in eating another human. They merely walk a little stiff, and their eyes stare blankly into nothingness. Their zombification is more a matter of behavioral changes, as they no longer possess a will of their own. All they do is follow the orders of their master. Oh, and befitting the film's name, most of White Zombie's zombies are indeed white, with the only exception of black workers in the voodoo magician's sugar mill factory. Because of this, White Zombie's portrayal of the zombie myth can be criticized as quite troublesome today. Critic Kyle Bishop, for instance, states that the movie exploits rumors of voodoo practices and paganism. The supposed real threat in White Zombie and similar films that followed is the thought of the white protagonists as the victims of zombification. Using white and supposedly innocent women as the victims, these films painted a very specific narrative of who to protect and who to blame. The horror these pictures showcased was the prospect of the Westerner being dominated and enslaved by those the films portrayed as natives. Yet, watching and judging White Zombie through a modern lens, the most haunting scene of the movie is not the possession of the white woman, but instead the brief shots of black men working the sugar mill, their eyes void of any liveliness, slaving away. When one falls into the mill, the rest just keeps moving, keeps working as if nothing happened. The scene is reminiscent of the zombie's slave origins and highlights what the rest of the movie ignores: the reality that in truth it was blacks and natives who suffered inhumane conditions, and not the white colonizers under some local witchcraft. As is the case with every monster, however, the fears zombies represented did not stay the same for long. In fact, zombies are probably the monsters most adaptable to current shifts and anxieties. The first of these shifts came in the 1940s. The backdrop of World War II, mass genocide, and dictatorships manifested films like King of the Zombies in 1941 and Revenge of the Zombies in 1943. They featured Nazis in control of the undead, in servitude of their own fanatic goals. A decade later, fears once again shifted, this time to the threat of nuclear weapons. One example here would be Creature with the Atom Brain, where zombies were reanimated through radioactive waves. Then, finally, in the late 60s, the zombie underwent a radical transformation that turned it into the creature akin to the undead on our screens today. This transformation is attributed to one man, George A. Romero. He rang in a new era of The Walking Dead, and is somewhat considered to be the godfather of today's zombie genre. And all of that was because of one film of his, called Night of the Living Dead. The Romero Era and a New Zombie Shape. George Andrew Romero was born on February 4th, 1940. With 14, he started on his own film projects and eventually went to study graphic arts in Pittsburgh. After graduating in 1960, he officially began his career, shooting short films and TV commercials at first. In the later half of the decade, he then formed the Image 10 production company, along with 9 of his friends. The group gathered their resources to finance his first feature-length film, a low-budget movie that he co-wrote with screenwriter John Russo. The movie's title, Night of the Living Dead. At first, the movie was far from a box office success. But in hindsight, moviegoers and critics alike recognized it as incredibly influential on the genre of horror. Night of the Living Dead would spawn 2 sequels in the coming decades, all from Romero's hand. The series would never quite let go of him, or he of it, and in the 2000s, he added to the Dead movies with 3 more zombie films. He also wrote a 15-part miniseries titled Empire of the Dead, which was released from 2014 onwards by Marvel Comics. Unfortunately, just 3 years later, Romero lost an exhausting battle with lung cancer and died at the age of 77. While he has passed, his impact on the movies has not. It is immortalized on our screens and has made him, in his words, like his zombies, undead. But what made his first 3 zombie films, especially Night of the Living Dead, so memorable for zombie horror? Well, allow me to set the scene. It's the late 1960s. Society is grappling with the civil rights and women's liberation movements, and brutal images of the Vietnam War are dominating TV screens. It's in front of this backdrop that the new release called Night of the Living Dead hits cinemas. Its beginning is rather harmless at first, a brother and sister at their father's grave. It doesn't take long, however, to go off the rails. A weird man attacks the brother and chases after the sister, who finds shelter in an empty farmhouse. Here's where the story really takes off. Bit by bit, it's revealed that parts of America are in an apocalyptic state. Creatures roam the land, hunting and devouring the living. The movie calls them ghouls, and they seem to be a combination of zombies, werewolves, and vampires. Neither dead nor alive, with mere basic brain function and an infectious bite. The sister, who's called Barbara by the way, tries to survive along a group of other people that she meets in the farmhouse. That task is anything but simple, as the characters fall victim to the undead one by one, until only one of them is left standing. That person is not Barbara, it's another character, called Ben. He survives until the military comes to the house and clears the area. They shoot all of the undead, which means Ben is saved, right? While he manages to survive the ghouls, he doesn't survive the humans, as one of the officers shoots him without hesitation. Alongside the rest of the zombies, they drag Ben's lifeless body out of the house with meat hooks. An image that can be considered quite shocking, because there's one little thing that I've not yet mentioned. Ben, our charismatic, hands-on main character, is black. In fact, he's the first major black horror movie protagonist. Maybe with this last bit of information, you ought to have a clearer picture of what made Night of the Living Dead stand out. It wasn't simply a film about the Walking Dead. Instead, it had an additional layer of social commentary interlaced into its plot. Even though Romero himself claimed that he did not intentionally set out to comment on race, Night of the Living Dead inevitably did so anyways. The pictures shown at the end of Ben's dead body, the shooting, the meat hooks, they all have a sour taste of real-life lynchings and of police brutality against Black people in America. More than that, Night of the Living Dead intertwined internal and external threats through the creation of power dynamics between the survivors. It pits typical suburban white man Harry against Ben in a struggle over dominance. Harry sees himself and his social standing threatened by both the zombies and Ben, and also his own wife Helen, who both allegorically represented the two social groups of women and people of color. Director and creator Jordan Peele puts it like this: "The way Night of the Living Dead handles race is essential to what makes it great. All social norms break down when this event happens, and a black man is caged up in a house with a white woman who is terrified. But you're not sure how much he's terrified at the monsters on the outside or this man on the inside, who is now the hero." Peele further suggests that Night offers a nuanced and relevant depiction of racial issues, something that has influenced him when it came to his own social horror movies like Get Out and Us. Both definite recommendations, by the way. Thinking back, it's almost funny of how much of a staple Night of the Living Dead became for zombie horror, when the movie didn't even mention the word once. Romero didn't even think of his creatures as such. It didn't matter though. The world saw them as zombies anyways. And so, the movie sequels, like Dawn of the Dead, then adapted the term into its text explicitly. By the way, I think it's important to mention that all of the movies of the Dead series deal with socially relevant topics. These topics were always fitting to their production times. Racism, feminism, consumerism. These movies have it all. They introduce us as viewers to a commentary of what makes us human. Scientists in the movies make it clear that, once turned, the undead aren't your loved ones anymore. They must be eliminated. Reactions to this news understandably reach from outrage to emotional outbursts. All things we still see in the modern zombie media. To sum up, Night of the Living Dead and its sequels were extremely influential on how the zombie creature is characterized and what it's used to criticize today. Of course, the zombie did not always keep its meaning and its social commentary. The zombie genre actually looked almost dead, no pun intended, until it was revived like the undead thing that it is. This can significantly be attributed to video games, evolving the creatures to match our fast-paced world and once again linking them to social criticisms. Diving into that part of the zombie movie history, however, would go beyond the scope of today's Neffviews Snack EP. If you want to, we can put a pin in that and return to it in a follow-up in the future. Just let me know if that's something that you're interested in. For today, I do want to circle back around to the main catch that I put in the title: the link between zombies and discriminatory undertones. Zombies and discrimination. There is one thing that we cannot deny. Zombies are based on a racist past. They originate from slavery, developed in spiritual beliefs, just to be whitewashed and misused for fear-mongering against natives. If we take all of this into consideration, zombies can definitely be considered problematic to a certain extent in their early movie days. Many scholars agree on that point of view. Yet, throughout its history, the zombie was also used as a vehicle to point out social injustices. Night of the Living Dead was the first, but certainly not last medium to do so. Sure, we could assume that zombie apocalypses erase all inequalities in our societies, that they wipe away discriminatory practices and create a joint human man-force. All against the undead. My enemy's foe is my friend, so to speak. While some zombie media does take this route, not all paint the world in such simple colors. Instead, media like Night of the Living Dead make undeniably clear that even a zombie epidemic does not erase discriminations, but can even highlight such practices. When zombies become the external threats, then interpersonal relationships gain all the more meaning and importance. Exclusion turns into a death sentence. Prejudice leads to power imbalances and struggles. Let alone the fact that zombification in general call our social bonds, belief systems, and what we even view as human beings into question. So, while zombies stem from racist origins, they have been reclaimed in this regard, and now operate on different grounds. Grounds of morality, of calling out prejudice, and a fascinating ambivalence. And with that banger of a conclusionary statement, this Neffview is coming to an end. We don't want to be cooking too long here. No one likes burnt popcorn. We like it nice and fresh. Much like, hopefully, your knowledge on zombie history after listening to me for these past few, however long this episode now is. There is so much more to say, of course, about the zombie as a whole, its evolved shapes, and its allegories in modern film and media. Not to mention of how much detail I had to skip over from Night of the Living Dead and its predecessors. There is so much more social commentary that we could get into from these films, you don't even know the half of it. So much so that I might just need to drop a review episode on these, to cover everything in depth. You should definitely subscribe to the show if you don't want to miss out on that. I mean, regardless, you should definitely go follow Neffviews on all platforms of your choice. Spotify and all other podcast platforms, YouTube, Instagram, whatever's up your alley. All links are, of course, down in the show notes for your convenience. While you're already scrolling down, maybe drop your thoughts and feedback in the comments down below. I can't wait to hear from you, and I would be very thrilled to welcome you back the next time. Stay curious and open-minded, and I'm very glad to have had you here. Bye bye!